So welcome to this episode of the WILL podcast, where I am sitting down with Meredith Eng. And Meredith is a healthcare attorney in Chicago. And we've been working together for a couple of years. And Meredith is going to really just share about her journey and where she was before we began and what happened during and what some of the pitfalls and challenges she fell into and how she got out of them. And she's on the brink of something very exciting and new starting next week that she will share as her story unfolds. So welcome, Meredith, and I'm so happy to do this call with you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Let's start with where you were when we first met, where and when that was.
We started working together in the summer of 2022. I was like a junior mid-level associate at a law firm in Chicago. And I reached out to you because I was just in a really tough place, I think, mentally and also in my career. And I was really looking for some guidance.
I remember it vividly. It was August, I think 18th, because it was my cousin's wedding. I was in Ithaca, and I remember doing this call from like the bedroom of the Airbnb I was at with like my brother and sister-in-law. And we also had like a special panel happening that day. I remember that vividly. And so what were you Googling and how did you find your way to me and what made you decide to book that call? Because I know that's a place people, it can take people months or years to actually do that. So I'd love to hear that for you.
Absolutely. So now I can't remember if someone had suggested I'm trying career coaching or if I had thought, I sought a lot of guidance from different people, from peers, from other women attorneys in the firm. And I felt like I was very much at a crossroads of some kind. I didn't know what it was, but I knew for sure that I couldn't keep on going the way that I was going because I was in such a poor place mentally and physically from all of the stress of my job. And so I started looking specifically for career coaches for women lawyers because I knew that I wanted to hear from someone who understood what it was like to work in a large law firm because it is a universe of its own. And unless you've had experience with it, it's really hard to understand why you can't just say, oh, I'm at capacity and I can't take on additional work or other things that come along with working at a law firm. And that was how I happened on your Above the Law article. And I started looking at all the things that you had done and the people that you had worked with. And I was like, yes, this is the kind of transformation I'm looking for.
Right. And I think also that I had a master's in public health. We share that. So that was, I remember you saying that when we first spoke. And then you enrolled right away on our consultation call. I think part of that, was like always having this panel that afternoon that I was like, hey, I really think you can benefit from this. You want to speak about what that panel was? And that was a real like magical synchronicity, I think, for you.
It was. So that afternoon, you were having a panel on taking FMLA, medical leave from work. And I was interested in the panel. I think I emotionally was not ready for that conversation, but it was so interesting to hear from women who had done it. And it totally destigmatized that action of taking the leave and taking that time for yourself. It was a totally different perspective than what I had heard. And I think just kind of my perspective too on just the concept of rest and like prioritizing your health and prioritizing yourself also what the needs of other people.
I really appreciate you saying like you weren't emotionally or psychologically quite ready to take that in. I think I'm curious if it planted a big seed for you. That's often the case when I'm working with someone and, who's physically, emotionally, mentally depleted, all the things that you're talking about. And one of the things I might say is, hey, have you ever thought about taking FMLA? And they're like, well, I don't qualify for that. That's not for me, right? I don't have a broken leg or cancer or a dying parent, that's often kind of whatever the idea is that someone has. I appreciate you saying that you weren't quite ready, but do you feel like it planted a seed for you?
Absolutely, because I really didn't have any concept. I knew what FMLA was. I had never taken it before, probably, even though I probably could have for some medical related conditions. And it was hugely helpful to hear also from the women in our group who are employment attorneys to give their legal perspective on it. That was really nice to hear.
Yeah, and that recording lives on for members of WILL are able to access that. Yeah, so we have Wilder Clements, who's done their own podcast episodes. We can link to that and you can hear about Wilder's journey. And Wilder is an employment attorney and gave the total lowdown on the federal law. So that was very helpful. So, okay, so you started your WILL journey in August 2022. And what was your experience like?
It was great. So I loved the structure of WILL Transform.
So why don't you describe it? Because I'd like to hear it in your own words, because, I have my spiel, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Absolutely. So in set of modules, a set of videos from Elena going through different topics and resources and things like that. And then there's corresponding assignments or exercises and things that you do so that you're actively practicing the concepts that you talk about. And so I liked that structure because it told me exactly what I needed to do. It's very akin to school. So I think all of our attorneys are great. And a lecture, an assignment, this is a perfect setup for
career change school for women in big law. And then, so that's one component is the modules. And then there's also the community and the one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
So you want to speak to those pieces a little bit?
Yeah, I really loved both of them. So I actually did my coaching with you, which was fantastic. And it was a huge help to talk about what was happening in present time and my mindset around those things. To be honest with you, I truly, before WILL, I did not understand what it meant to shift your mindset or shift the way that you think things. Because I think historically, I was a pretty black and white person. And they are, things are or they aren't. I'm factually reporting on what's happening. But you really helped me see how making small changes in language or perspective or asking questions, questioning my thoughts and beliefs about certain things, how those things can make a huge difference in how you feel. And I think I felt kind of frozen at the time. I think that's a good way to describe where I was. And so those conversations helped me see that it wasn't just that I'm not talented or hardworking enough, but there are other things at play here about the legal industry that make things very hard for attorneys. That's no secret to anyone at all, and certainly very, very hard for women attorneys as well.
Can you give an example of a mindset shift? Because I think you're right. I think that term is used so that will change your mindset. And it's well, what does that mean? What did that look like for you? A specific example.
I think one thing that comes to mind was certainly just thinking that if I worked harder, that I wasn't working hard enough. And if I just tried harder, I could accomplish whatever it was that I wanted to accomplish. And I was really down on myself for not excelling in the ways that I wanted to, or feeling like I wasn't handling demanding matters, as flawlessly as I wanted to handle them. And one thing that you asked, I'm falling short, or I'm not doing X, Y, or Z. And you asked, is that a fact or is that a story that you're telling yourself? And when you're saying things like that, who is that voice coming from? Is it from myself, or is it from, I personally have a very strong inner critic voice who's very loud. And so that was the beginning of an understanding of broadening my perspective and identifying, I think, the sources and the voices of these thoughts and beliefs that I had. When the whole time I thought it was just me.
Right. You got some distance, some oh, wait a minute, that's not me. That's my mean, nasty inner critic. And it's telling all sorts of stories that when I actually start to question, wait a minute, is that factual? And so you're able to use your analytic part of your brain, to help you discern what is your inner critic and what is your more authentic voice. I mean, one of the things I heard you say, and we talked about this before the call, so I know it's okay to share it, is no one could ever be meaner to you than your inner critic. You want to speak to that a little bit, how that may have changed at all, if it has?
Yeah, I think throughout my WILL work, historically, I think when I felt that I had made a mistake or I didn't do something perfectly, I was the first person to identify it and punish myself for it. Like many women have felt like I had to be perfect in all of the things that I do, not just school or work, but also, in my personal life and in my appearance and things like that. And you helped me identify, I think I was very well aware of that habit that I had. And I think through the work that we've done, I've been able to more quickly identify that inner critic voice when she's popping up, which is huge. And then I've also been able to, I think, more effectively respond or brush it off. I remember recently, it was a couple months ago, I was stressing about, I had a lot of things to do, and they were social things, like not things of great consequence. It's like, I got to get it done. I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to have that. And then there was like a voice that popped up that was like, what if it just doesn't get done? And I was like, oh, everyone will learn. Everything will be fine. It's like a nice, like I got this like sigh of relaxation as you said that. What happened for you when you had that new thought? It did. It brought everything. I was really like, Meredith, if you can't see Meredith, she's like shoulders up by her like eyebrows. Yeah. It really took the stress level down and allowed me to relax a little bit. Beautiful. Which was huge. Yeah, it's huge. And then I think, as we keep going through your journey, we're going to dig into like, what was your mindset? And really your mindset are your thoughts and how they make you feel. And then what actions you can take as a result of like those thoughts and feelings. And then what results you get. So if you're always telling yourself like, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, if I just work harder, and you feel tense and anxious and like you're in fight, flight, or freeze, you're not taking effective action. Maybe you're probably not sleeping well. You're not taking care of your body. And for your body to be that sustained state of fight, flight, or freeze, it's a whole other episode. Yeah. So I just wanted to give that small example of like what it is, but you're not going to get the results you want of finishing the project in a calm and timely manner, or doing your best work, or having more fun with your friends when you're not stressed about getting everything done. And then the third component of the WILL program is the community. And then we'll get back to your journey. So would you care to speak to that at all? Yes. But for me, the community calls in their variety of format are so huge for me. And I think that was also, in addition to the FMLA workshop, one of the things that I did initially, I think the following week, there was a community call. And I got on this Zoom with, I don't know, a handful, like 5, 6 other other women lawyers, other WILL members, talking about what they were going through, sharing very candidly, being totally vulnerable about their particular situations. And for me, it was so heartwarming and such a relief to see that it wasn't just me who felt like she wasn't measuring up, or who was going through a challenging situation and didn't know what to do. And, it's a great practice. The other components, the modules working with you are wonderful and they're really, really important. But it's interesting too how much I think we get to practice those strategies and habits in the community calls as well when we're hearing from other WILL members. And so for me, I love the community so much. It's so wonderful. I was actually talking to another WILL member this week, and I was saying, strange to me that so many people are like, women lawyers, I bet that's a tough crowd, and have all of these negative things to say about a group of women attorneys. I don't think that I could be hyperbolic about how wonderful everyone in the community is and how much support and understanding you can receive from the other WILL members and be really seen. I think it's the most wonderful thing. This is a group of people who want nothing more than your success and happiness, and they are happy to do whatever they can to support it. And it's honestly magical. It's great. Thank you, Meredith. I'm feeling all the feels, and
like full body chills. We'll get into how you've continued in the community later, but let's get back to your journey now. And so you were, doing the modules and doing your one-on-one coaching. I want to say, like, Meredith, you really showed up. You took advantage of everything I offered you. If you want an accountability buddy, you said yes. And you had a great accountability buddy experience because you really made the decision to do this work. Then what happened for you?
As I was thinking about my WILL journey, it's funny how the timing of everything lined up. So about the same time as I was finishing WILL Transform, this was like December of that year, 2022, I had really hit a breaking point because I hadn't said no to additional work. I was working on some things that were very, very demanding. And so I was just totally and completely burnt out, such that I hit a breaking point, and I was like, I'm just going to quit tomorrow. Like, no notice, nothing. Like, I have to be done, which for me felt pretty scary because I think one of my strongest characteristics is that I'm very resilient. Even when things are tough, I pop back up and I keep going. And in this situation, I knew in my heart, I was like, it has to stop now. I spoke to a mentor at work, actually, who recommended that I take an FMLA leave instead of quitting. And she was like, even if you don't come back, try this first before the permanent choice of quitting. It was tough. When I say I wasn't emotionally ready for it, one thing about me is that I think programs like this are wonderful for everyone else, but my inner critic is like, not for you though. So as much as I champion and fully supported people taking FMLA, I was like, not for me. And so it was tough. It was a very emotional decision. I was very scared about what people would say and think and how it was going to affect my career. That was my inner critic popping up, all of my fears, the stigma of everything kind of coming to a head.
Right, of everything. And I just want to normalize like all this resistance because, I go through it myself and I'm in a program now. I'm having so much resistance. It's like, oh, wow, fascinating. But I just want to normalize this like as part of a WILL journey of like that you were doing all the work, you were showing up. We had a great list of like new options for you. You were setting better boundaries at work and then they broke. I remember that was when you were in California, right, visiting your family for the holidays and your sister is an osteopath or cranial, right? And she was trying to do like craniosacral work on you and you were so tense. Like, tell us that story. And because that was part of like right around the time you decided to like quit and then got talked into taking the FMLA.
I got migraines. And I think, to be honest, I could not stop crying. I was so upset and I was just tears streaming down my face. I was having like a horrible migraine from all of the stress. And so my sister offered to do some cranial sacral work to help open up the spell, relieve the migraine. And she was working on my head and she was like, you know what? She was like, this is crazy. But she was like, you are so like tight and frozen up. She was like, I can't like open up the places that I need to open up to even work on you. And I think that was also a signal. I was like, okay, here's a medical fact. In addition to how horrific I feel, it's quite clearly showing up in my body. And it had in other ways. I mean, I'll be very candid that I had a lot of sleep problems. I couldn't fall asleep at night. I would wake up just stressed about the work. And even at one point, I was so stressed, I developed eczema, which I never had in my life. And I was scratching my skin open until I bled because I was just in such a state. And so the conversation, my feeling, and that experience with my sister just saying like, there's nothing to be done at this point, really helped cement to me, like, it's time to take this leave. I don't have any other option.
Again, like, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of this because I think it's so common. Skin problems, irritable bowel problems, hair loss, migraines, vision problems. Like when your body's in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze, which is what you were, it's so normal. But then you feel like, what's the matter with me? It's just as more reinforcing of like, why can't I handle this? Why is this happening? And it's just another stressor then. Okay. So then you decided to do the FMLA, right? And even though like you were having all this like tumult with it and this feeling so torn about doing it, even when you were in this program, even when you were getting support, even when you had that seed planted, in August. So what happened when you decided to do FMLA?
The first thing that I want to say is that, I had all of these fears about what are people going to say? I'm going to let people down, what have you. I didn't experience any of that. Everyone's reaction was, I am so sorry. You need to take time off, feel better. We'll see you when you get back. And nobody asked me why I was going on leave or, what are we going to do about all of the work? It was very much, here's the process. And then I think within like 2 or 3 days, I was like, okay, I can do a couple more days and then I'll be done just to transition things off. And I will say, with the people with whom I was more transparent about why I was taking FMLA, the support, it was overwhelming. The love and compassion. I was so pleasantly shocked by it. At the time, I was actually the chair of a minority attorney professional organization in the city. And I felt a little embarrassed to say, like, this is what I'm doing, but I had to tell people because they needed to retreat some other way. I just couldn't believe it. People were very, they were concerned about how I was doing. They were grateful that I shared it with them. They offered any kind of help that I wanted. It was just really incredible. And I share that, and same with everyone in WILL too. I mean, people were cheering loudly and had taken this step. And so I share that because I couldn't have been more wrong about how people were going to react to my decision. And I want to share that for anybody who's thinking, what are people going to say? The people who love you are going to say, I'm so glad that you're taking care of yourself. And this was the right thing to do.
So good. All right. So you got all that love and support and that surprise. And again, so common. Like, what are people going to think? People are going to think XYZ. It's going to mean XYZ for my career. And like the actual experience, just so different. So then what did you do on your leave and how long did you take? And was it paid or unpaid?
Yes, my leave was fully paid for 3 months. I originally had thought, I'll be ready to go back in 2. And I wasn't. Everybody thinks that.
Some people are like, I just need 30 days. I'm like, just please don't tell them your return date yet.
It seems like a long time when you need that kind of healing. I would advise you to take as much time as you can. And I will say, right after I took the leave, I was very sick for like 2 weeks. So, some unknown cold, flu, whatever. But I think it was my body saying, okay, we finally got time to rest because you've hit this breaking point. And so, I really just kind of rested for a couple of weeks while I was coming back from that. I also decided to go to a retreat in Puerto Rico that was fantastic. It's called Casa Alterna Vida, and they're just outside of San Juan. It is fantastic. And the idea of the retreat is disconnecting with technology in the outside world, connecting with nature, eating nourishing food, and playing. And so I booked a flight there, went on this retreat where we did yoga in the morning outside and we did nature excursions every day. So hiking in the rainforest there to the beach and things like that. And I remember the first day I was there, Nancy, the owner, he asked me, he was like, how often do you play? And I was like, this is the dumbest question. And I'm like, I don't know. And he was like, okay, well, when was the last time you played? And I was like, I couldn't tell you. And that actually made me kind of sad.
All right. Well, we're going to do some playing at the next retreat you're going to, which is the Will retreat in Sedona, which is coming up before we get there. So you're on this leave, you got really sick, and that's also super common. Your body and you're not the only Will member who, like I've heard, just couldn't stop crying, can keep functioning, and your body and your brain shut down. And that's, it's self-protective at that point. So I'm glad you took good care of yourself. So 3 months passed, and then where were you? In terms of going back and where were you in your Will journey at that point too?
During that same time, and this is what I mean about things really lining up, you were running a special mastermind for the book called Burnout by the Nagoski sisters. So I started in that group, which was fantastic. We read the book together, did the exercises, had accountability partners. And if you have not read the book, I highly recommend it. It is an evidence-based book about the science of burnout. And Elena, you mentioned my public health background before. That for me was huge to see scientific evidence of burnout and the experience that I was having. So that was hugely beneficial to my journey and where I was at the time. And I think that in combination with my time off, that's about the time where I came to the realization, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is not working. And so I did decide to go back to work. I wanted to, this is my resilience popping up. I was like, I've had this time to rest. I was feeling better and I didn't want to give it another try. And so I did. I went to work.
Yeah. And then at what point you were like, okay, I think I can make partner. You were also like, and I was like, okay, let's go. Right? I was like, okay. So you're like, you go back, but you also set a really important boundary when you went back. And I think this is a really, very useful thing that I've learned from helping so many women take leaves. And when they go back, you were able to negotiate some new boundaries upon return. So speak a little bit about that.
Probably the main driving factor for me taking my leave was that I was working on a very, very demanding matter. I felt that it was critical to my success in returning to work that I no longer work on that matter. And so I met with my practice group chair, I think slightly before I came back to work. And I said, so glad you're ready to have me back. I'm ready to be back. But I think it's really important to talk about how I got here in the first place. And so I said, I don't want to work on that particular matter anymore. And she said, okay.
Just like that.
Yes.
And what stories have you been telling yourself before that conversation?
Oh, that she was never going to agree to it. Or, the partner whose matter it was would not agree to it. Again, it was a million times more simple than I had imagined in my mind.
What did you take from that? And how did that help you kind of continue to set boundaries as you returned?
I was beginning to realize that part of my stress is that I build up, it's my anxiety. I build up these narratives in my mind, these stories about things that haven't happened yet. And I'm certain that that's how they're going to play out. And I was wrong, like 4 really important times.
So far, right? By now, there's another important one coming. So yes. So stay tuned for that. Okay, great. Okay, so you're back at work. You've set some boundaries. You're managing better. You're getting more support and will through this mastermind where we're going through the burnout book. And then what happened for you next?
Well, after that was when you launched Will Evolve.
Yes.
Yes. I was so thrilled because I had loved the burnout mastermind and was really excited. I knew at that point, I'm only getting started on this transformation that I'm having in my career. And I really wanted the continued experience and support of a structured program. And so I stayed on with Will Transform, which was wonderful. I think I was doing additional one-on-one coaching with you also that time, which was critical because I had been very concerned about my return to work and whether I would slide back into the habits that had resulted in me going in the first place.
And it's so normal, right? Because you have all that conditioning. There's all that social conditioning to just slide back. And it's so easy to take those habits to a new job. So I created Will Evolve. It's the way people continue after their initial program in Will Transform, which is 6 months. You join Will Evolve and you're continuing your Will journey and you're trying to make it work at work. And then what?
So I went back to work, I think around April, and I thought, okay, like this is all right. Let me try to do another 6 months. I think at that time I was like, I'll do one more year or I'll do another 6 months. This is the beginning of a habit for me. So I thought, okay, great. We'll try again to do one more year. I think I continued to struggle with boundary practice. I wasn't doing enough of it.
Note to everyone, see link to boundary setting practice episode. It's a practice. Bottom line, it's a practice.
Now, I was continuing to work. I think I wasn't feeling fulfilled. Truly around the pandemic, I had started thinking about returning to a more mission-based organization, which is how I started my career as a hospital administrator. And I was very much feeling that call. And so in addition to that, things were going okay at work, but they were not great. And I wasn't really that happy. So I said, okay, another 6 months. And then we got to the new fiscal year and I had received some feedback just about my performance that was challenging to hear. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to rise to the occasion and really just go all in again, and I'm going to give my whole heart and soul into it. And if it does not work, then okay, then I have my answer. And so I did that. What happened was precisely what you would expect, that I was very unhappy. I was working a tremendous amount. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was very, very stressed about other people's expectations of me. And around this time, a couple of months into it, I started having some health problems again with brain fog and my migraines, which made it obviously very difficult to perform at my job. I was really unhappy. I was miserable. I felt like I was just clawing my through the day, just incredibly unhappy. And I talked to you, Elena, and I remember saying, I wish I could quit. I just wish I should quit. I could quit. And you said, why don't you?
I said, why can't you? I'd like to think that I said, why can't you?
It was probably that.
It's a little bit more of a skillful question.
I heard, why don't you? You're right. It was, I do believe it was, why can't you? So I thought about all of the reasons that I can't. I didn't have another job. I didn't think that I had enough money to just quit with no job. But you said, why don't you think about it? And what I thought was what ultimately was really very helpful, because again, I was having this anxiety and trepidation about quitting. You said, why don't you just pick a date? You don't have to tell anybody, but pick a date by which you want to quit. And so I think I picked July 19th. And it was really interesting. I had the chance I was doing traveling over 4th of July and it was floating in the ocean. And it was the first vacation I had taken where I hadn't worked at all.
Was that when you went to see Taylor Swift with your friends in Florida?
No, that was earlier. I had gone. Taylor.
You set an awesome boundary around that. Someone was like, can you work? And you were like, no. You were like, no, I'm at Taylor Swift in Tampa. It was like the beginning of the Eras tour. No one even knew what was like really to come. You were like, no. I was like, yes, that was such a good moment, a good Will win.
It was a great practice moment, because I think, before I would have said, okay, and then just been sad about it and mad about it.
I missed going to one of the first Eras tour shows.
But in July, I was in Cancun and floating in this beautiful ocean and just, thinking about how, again, it was the first vacation I had taken in the 6 years that I had been practicing, where I wasn't working at all. And I was like, I want more of this. This is what I want. I want to experience the world and see things and have a life outside of my job. it was, I think, a really great just light bulb moment for me because, I had long been thinking, I had this underlying thought in the back of my mind because as a teenager, I was very, very sick. I had a brain tumor and now I'm perfectly healthy from that. And 10 years prior, my dad had passed away very suddenly while we were on vacation, actually.
And you were quite young. You were very young when he died too.
Yeah.
How old were you?
26. Both of these things, of course, were devastating. And both experiences, these near-death experiences where I had the opportunity to think or to find out, it's almost the end for me, or it is the end for one of the people I love the most. I had the opportunity to know, what am I going to wish for in the end when things are really over for me? And even, when I was sick, I was like, this sucks. I would have had more fun and studied. So I was furious then. And of course, when my dad passed away, I wanted more than anything in the world to spend a minute with him. And I wish for that every day. I really had this pervasive thought around this time that, I had these experiences and I know what I'm going to want at the end of my life. And I felt like I hadn't really learned anything. And so I think it was those thoughts and having that moment in the ocean, being like, this is how I want to live my life, that really came together and clicked for me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to quit.
Well, first of all, just thank you. That's just, what are you going to want at the end of your life, right? It's a big question. And you got that clarity. What did you do with that?
I quit.
And did you have something else lined up?
No, I didn't. I was scared.
What was your mindset? So you had this light bulb moment, you remembered your own near-death experience. You remember your dad dying so young. So you had that, and then the fear comes in. So what were the battling thoughts in your head and heart?
Oh, the first one, of course, was you can't quit without another job lined up. And, I was like, the other huge thought was, you don't have enough money to do something like this. Actually, I had the chance to meet with the wonderful Jessica Medina, financial coach and counselor who works with a number of WILL members. She's amazing.
And other lawyers who want to figure out, Jessica and I partner together a lot. So we'll link to her for sure, to help you figure out the money so that you can make these changes more calmly with more confidence. Yeah. So you had done some work with Jessica.
Yes. And so we created a concrete financial plan for about how long I could go without working at all. And she also gave me the helpful advice, which was I could start working again anytime. I could pick up contract work, and extend this for a little longer until I got to whatever permanent role I would have.
I know lawyers think you did, Meredith, you did leave without something. You did go from a big law salary to zero, most people don't do that. And that's such good advice. So thank you, Jessica, for you can always pick up some contract work. You can always plug, you have marketable skills and can earn some hourly very easily as a lawyer. Okay. So you quit. And how did that go? What was the story you were telling yourself about what people were going to think and what they were going to say and how they were going to react?
Oh, then people would be mad that they would, be upset that I'm leaving all of this work behind, that they would tell me that this wasn't a good idea or it was too risky, things that I had thought about before. And again, I was wrong. People were overwhelmingly supportive. It was really interesting because the feedback that I got was, we're sorry to see you go, but you seem really happy and you seem very sure. They're like, we wish you the best and we hope it, works out the way that you want it to. And all very positive and lovely. And I got a lot of offers even from my wonderful department chair, when you're ready to find a permanent job, let us know. We're happy to help you get where you want to go.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's so common. I've had people tell me they're about to throw up. They couldn't sleep at all the night before. They're running to the bathroom every 5 minutes. That's very, very common when you go to give notice. And then, like you said, the people who love you, the people who care for you, at the end of the day, it's your life, right? There was something someone said, a partner, someone said to you that was like very helpful that just dropped in. Do you remember what I'm referring to? There was someone who's like said something like, no one is going to take care of your career for you. What was that someone, one of your mentors, a partner at the firm said to you?
It was a woman who was on the professional board that I was on for minority attorneys. And she said, you have to take charge. She was like, this sounds blunt, but you have to take charge of your career because no one is going to do it for you. And so this was my moment of really grabbing my career by the horns, I guess, and taking it where I wanted to go. Even though I was scared of the risk, I couldn't really think of another time where I had taken a risk on myself. And that was something that I really wanted to do because I knew in my heart this was the right choice. And it felt incredible to bet on myself like that.
And what was the date that you gave notice?
July 19th.
All right, we might have to break this episode into 2 parts. If we do that, we'll do that. But like, so then what a synchronicity, right? You set that intention. That's some of the magic of making a decision and the universe then just sort of conspiring in your favor. But there's lots going on. You're taking more action than you think you are when you set that kind of intention. So take us into now. What happened then after you gave notice?
It was wonderful. The other synchronicity, of course, is that at around the time I gave notice, a couple weeks later, we started Creator Circle.
Oh, let's tell everyone about the Creator Circle.
So Creator Circle, which I never, when I first heard about it, I was like, that is so not for me. I would never do that. Creator Circle is a wonderful, intensive, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, together work through the exercises and engage in her practices. And we meet a couple of times a month to do that. The concept of the book is that there is an artist inside everyone. And it's interesting because I didn't think that I was a creative person historically because I wasn't super engaged, I don't have a lot of fine motor control. So art is a little bit of a struggle for me, even though I love music and dance and all of these other things and employ creativity in a lot of other ways. But Creator Circle really called to me because I was like, okay, here I am at yet another crossroads, a really, really big one, even bigger than the one before when I first joined WILL. And I was like, I want to seize this opportunity to see where my life can go. I think at this point, I finally, years later, started to see that there's an entire world of possibility of what my life can look like. It could be anything at all. And I probably have no idea, even at this point, what that's going to look like. But I knew that I wanted to go out and find it.
So the Creator Circle it's a year-long mastermind, like you said, a year-long intensive kind of journey through the artist's way. And we're about halfway through that. And what has that given you so far on this path to expanding, seeing what else is possible for you?
It's really cemented in my mind the kind of life that I want to have, that I want a full and expressive life. The way I described it to a friend was, I want to go out in the world and see things and taste them and hear them, and just be a part of just the wonderfulness that life has to offer and the great things that are out there. It's funny that actually creeping, as I was making that decision to quit, I'm going to go back for a second. I was thinking, I was like, how do I want to spend my life? What do I want to do? And I was like, this is my one precious life. This is my one precious life. And that really spoke to me, of course, because of my experiences. The hilarious thing is that I thought that I came up with that. And I was just listening to Jenny McKee's episode that you did with her. Not only is it a statement by Mary Oliver, I for sure heard it through Jenny McKee. So hilariously, I thought that I heard this beautiful thought myself.
You probably might have seen it on Instagram at some point. Helena Bonham Carter reads poems. You ever catch that? I'm like, it's really cool. She lounges around and reads poems out loud. It's so good. And she's read that one. So I'm not advocating you get on social media to do that. But if you happen to be there and happen to,
I will check it out.
so yes, what are you going to do? So that was pivotal for you. And you're like, I want to be more alive. Like I remember you saying something like, I don't want this to define me. I want to be more than my job.
Creator Circle has really, I think, opened my eyes more to the beauty that there is in life, things that are big and small, and that you can have big and small expressions of creativity. And I've been shocked at how much joy and energy it's brought me. Like, I really think the best way to describe it is that I feel invigorated when I'm doing these. I take like a very broad definition of, what a creative experience is. I went to, of course, I go to art museums. I went to go see plays. I saw Wicked. I also did a class on intro to DJing because I love it.
I think you did tell us. You've been doing like cooking classes, right? And so one of the things in the artist way, one of the practices is to take yourself on a weekly artist date. So those are some of the things that you're doing. And you went to this like so cool, sexy dance class. It's like heels. I was like, what's that? What's heels? So I get to learn new things also. It's like sexy dancing in high heels.
I did it in my socks, so not quite as sexy. It was still fun. It was still a good experience. I did ballroom, which I had always wanted to do, and I loved it. So that was fun. I reorganized my office. I even had a really satisfying experience doing a coloring book. Just colored pencils. I just got down in my office for about an hour and a half. I put on music and a candle, and I was like so proud of myself after. I was like, the coloring is beautiful.
I mean, but back to what the guy in Puerto Rico, the retreat leader said, like, when's the last time you played? I think the artist way is one of the ways that it helps us get back to play.
1,000%, because the artist date doesn't have to be like super serious.
It doesn't have to be a trip to the art institute, right?
Right. It can be, I think, anything that is new or exciting and exploratory, because I think it'll spark your creativity in some kind of way.
You're not gamefully and busily and obsessively employed in Big Lot. You're slow it down. You're taking some artist dates. It was also the summer in Chicago. Like, you and I had a call once, and you're like outdoors and you're glowing, and like you're just like, you look like physically well and rested and glowy. What's going on for you? You're searching for a job. Tell us a little bit more about this phase.
It was interesting because pretty soon after I had quit, I was interviewing intensively for a job of the government that I was really excited about. I thought it went super well, but then I didn't get the final offer. So I ended up interviewing for another division, a healthcare division. And I was like, great. I'm really excited about the mission and things like that. I ended up having a really surprising interaction with one of the interviewers who felt very negatively about my decision to take a leave. And I was shocked.
Not just to take a leave of absence, right? But to quit without something lined up, right? She was like very judgy.
Yeah, she was very aggrieved, I think is the best way.
That's a good word.
Her reaction to me quitting without another job lined up, and I expressing, an interest in work-life. I don't think I expressed an interest in work-life balance. I think that was something she extrapolated on her own. And I was really taken aback by that response. I did, respond professionally, and that was fine. Of course, as you can expect, did not get a call back for that role. And I was really upset about it. I was really upset.
Yeah, you brought that into Will Evolve Circle, right? We talked, right? I mean, because it was like one of those negative stories that you thought you might encounter, you actually did, was someone was like judging you for having left without. And I remember you leaned into some of the extra stuff that happens in Will Evolve as I bring in guest speakers, interviews that Will Evolve members get to sit in on. And one was with Anne-Marie Segal and her book, Master the Interview. So I want to make sure we link to this also. I remember that this book, and I think you said it on the conversation I did with Anne-Marie Segal about mastering the interview. So tell us about like your interviewing process. So you had this negative experience with this aggrieved woman. Curious like about two things. One, how did you work through that and get sort of rebuild your confidence? If your confidence did take a hit, how you were thinking about interviewing, how Will, in all honesty, and like was helping you think about and show up in your interviews.
Honestly, I was in my feelings for a couple of days because, I talked this whole time about how everyone was wonderful and supportive and I had this great experience. And so to receive that kind of response was really shocking to me. I did have such a wonderful conversation with other WILL members about it. And really what I took away from this situation was that it was that reminder about like the classic saying that an interview is a two-way street. They're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. One of my accountability partners said, she was like, I think because I was like, maybe I should have done things differently. And she very, very wisely said, I think you've forgotten or lost sight for why you quit your job in the first place. You were looking for something different, something that fits, your vision, your new vision for your life. It sounds like that experience doesn't align with the vision that you have moving forward. And that's okay. And you can just continue to look for the thing that you want because it's out there. And that was a huge redirection for me. It was a wonderful, wonderful supportive reminder to keep the faith, because I think my confidence did take a hit after this experience. And I started to question whether I had made the wrong choice. But I thankfully from that experience was able to bounce back, reorient myself to what I wanted, because it was one of those moments where I was like, I didn't come this far to just come this far. I'm going to hold on, make sure that I get to the finish line of where I want to go.
Yes, I just added that quote to the Will Evolve page. I kid you not. That is just like a synchronicity. Okay, so you have the support from, your accountability buddy. You got some coaching around it and some of our calls. And then what else is happening for you in terms of interviewing? And you're really in it with this like two-way street mentality, which I just want to highlight because I think it's so common to be like, oh, will they have me? And the narrative in Big Law is like, oh, you're lucky to be here and you should just be grateful. And so, that's a lot of conditioning to undo. And I really saw you building. You're like, no, I'm being discerning. I saw you really blossom in this interview process. What was going on for you internally there?
Thank you. That's exactly right. I had, certainly being a millennial, I graduated college in 2010, right after the Great Recession. That experience in combination with the law school and the law firm conditioning about just being grateful. Be grateful you have a job at all. Be grateful to be here. Be what we want you to be was something that was very internalized and pervasive for me. In retrospect, I think it was kind of a blessing that I did so much interviewing throughout these last couple of months, because it did allow me to think really seriously about the value that I bring to a team and to an experience, because I do have a unique background and I did build up all of these skills over the last 6, 8, 10 years that I've been working and studying and things like that. And so I really did use what my accountability buddy said as a guiding light moving forward. Is this the kind of experience that's going to help take me where I want to go with my life? And so I had a number of challenging interviewing experiences after that as well. But I also had some that were very, very good.
Tell us where you are now, as you're on the brink of starting something new. And also on the brink of, joining your first WILL retreat. We're going to Sedona with a group of other WILL members and alumni and others. And, take us into where you are now, Meredith.
Happily. So I'm really excited to announce that next week on Monday, I will be starting a new job as an associate general counsel at a large health system here in Illinois. And I'm really, really excited about the opportunity.
And what about it feels like a right fit because you were very discerning. There was a lot in this that, checked a lot of boxes for you. So tell us about that.
This was one of the best interview experiences I ever had. It was really interesting juxtaposition of this experience from the other experiences that I had, because I was super excited about the opportunity, and I was meeting with the woman who will be my boss, and she asked, why did I leave the firm? And I had started to refine my answer to that based on prior experiences. Essentially what I had told her was actually came out differently than the prepared answer that I have. I generally share that I was looking to go towards a more mission-based organization because I'd done that before and I loved it. I wanted to do something that made a positive difference on our healthcare system. And what I said to her was something to the effect of that I felt that if I didn't leave, I would keep saying 6 more months or 1 more year, 6 more months. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to answer this call that I had inside me to do something different. And she responded so positively. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it is to be seen and understood. And that was just such a wonderful signal to me about the kind of people that they are. Their reputation of being nice and great, which I love. I'm very excited about.
It can happen. It exists out there. It's like, I think this story of like, there's nothing good out there and you just have to work like this everywhere. So you may as well just stay with the devil, and, is so pervasive. But you're not working there yet, but you showed up as yourself in that answer. You were honest. And then what happened?
And so it ended up, that was my first interview with them. I ended up receiving an offer from them that was actually higher than what the position was posted for. They felt that based on my experience, it was more appropriate to have a more senior role. And throughout the whole process, they had been so wonderful and supportive of saying, we see that you have all of this experience, you have this knowledge, this expertise, and wanted to recognize and compensate me for that. And it was just so validating. I was like, oh, is this what it feels like in an interview to have this kind of experience?
Right. Where you're not just being like told you should be grateful for being here and let's see how high you can jump.
And so, if I could talk to myself in August, I would 100% say, stay the course, hold on to your convictions and don't waver, because it's going to turn out even better than you imagine.
And so if you could then go back to, and talk a little bit about, and you said yes to the WILL retreat, right? And so how come you said yes to that?
I've just been having such a great experience with Creator Circle and everything with WILL. I thought this was such a great opportunity to get out in nature, finally meet you in person.
I know. I keep saying, I can't wait to hug you. I'm so excited. We're going to do our makeup together. We're going to get ready with me together.
So funny because I have dozens of basically pen pals that it's like the modern day pen pal, getting to meet everyone in person. And so I'm just so excited to be in community in this beautiful place and have this experience together. I think it'll be really cool and a great way to continue to grow and expand. And I'm super excited for it. And I think it'll be fun.
So I think it's such beautiful timing, as the retreat is just it's like the week after you start your new job. You're on this brink of this amazing next chapter. And if you could go back to that Meredith who was on that call in August 2022, what would you tell her?
It's a great question. I have 2 initial thoughts. My first thought is maybe I wouldn't tell her anything at all, because I think things worked out the way that they were supposed to. And I'm not somebody who can be told. I have to experience it for myself to come to those decisions. So even as much of a roller coaster and as challenging and very difficult it was at a lot of times, in some ways, I think I just had to do the work to get to where I am now. And I couldn't have done it any other way. The other part of me would say, listen to your heart and listen to your body. It is okay to say, this is not right for me, even if maybe it's right for other people, but it's fine and frankly good to walk away from something that is not right for you.
You know, in knowing we were doing this podcast interview and knowing you would have the opportunity to say something to other women lawyers who might feel in that stuck and frozen and really scared place, what might you want to say to them?
You're not alone. It is not that you aren't talented enough or you're not working hard enough. What we do is very difficult. The best thing that you can do for yourself is to, again, listen to your heart and to reach out to other people. And if you feel like this is not how you want your career to go and you are ready to at least think about doing something different, I beg you to come to Elena and come to Will, because there's a whole life out there for you that is more than what you have right now. It's waiting for you. So come and find it.
I can't thank you enough. What beautiful words. Nothing to add. That's just thank you. What a beautiful place to, I think, wrap up our conversation. And just with so much appreciation. Again, you know, you've continued to like blossom and then shrink back, right? Which is totally normal. It's totally part of the problem. I'm like, I'm taking a leave of absence and then I'm going back. And okay, I'm going to try and make partner. I was like, okay. And then like, I can't, I'm going to quit. I was like, okay. So, and it's just been such a beautiful honor and privilege to be your coach on this journey, to watch you expand and expand and expand and like find that safety. You know, I think we can't expand too far too fast because our nervous system freaks out. I think you've learned that. I'm just realizing this now. Like, I think you've learned that you have to expand and then contract a little, and that's normal. And that is creating safety for you as you continue to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful to you and so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing all the ups and downs and, you know, just so excited to see what's next for you as you continue to, you know, start a new job. But it's not just that, right? It's that creative expansion and like your commitment to not letting your job define you. We didn't even talk about human design and that you're a manifestor. And like, what are you going to create next? Let's stay tuned on Meredith's journey. And thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.